Good morning and welcome to a day in Thailand. Today is actually March 23rd, so we're right in the middle of the coronavirus, Covid-19 crisis that's going on everywhere. And I thought I'd break out the GoPro today because it's kind of a special day. I have to go to Thailand Immigration and try to get an extension on my tourist visa. I came here, I'm in the town of Mae Sot, by the way, Mae Sot, Thailand. It's right on the border with Myanmar. And I came here because my visa for Myanmar expired, and the idea was to turn around, get a new visa for Myanmar and head back into Myanmar. But of course, when I got here, the coronavirus pandemic started. And I was trying to decide what to do, whether to actually go into Myanmar, fly to Malaysia, do some other things. And while I was thinking about it, all the borders around me closed. So as far as I know, I can't really go anywhere. I mean, I've been Googling a lot of the different countries, on Google News every morning, Vietnam, Laos, Malaysia, anywhere where I could go from here. And at the moment, all those borders are closed to foreigners. I think Cambodia is still a little bit open, but even that's a bit of a wild card because you don't know what you're going to face when you get there. And a lot of the airlines are shutting down as well. So even if you could go to Cambodia with as a foreigner, you might be facing quarantine when you get there, or there might be no flights into the country at all. You just don't know. So for me, the best option, I think, is to try to get an extension for my Thailand tourist visa and just stay here in Mae Sot. It's not a good time, I guess, to be even traveling around Thailand. The authorities want you to stay put where you are, to reduce the risk of spreading the virus. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do today. And interestingly enough, the Thailand Immigration Office, as far as I know, is located here at the border with Myanmar. Right behind me is the immigration post leading to the Friendship Bridge, which goes across to Thailand. And a few days ago, they closed it to foreigners. They were still allowing Myanmar people and Thai people to cross back and forth. This is a very, very busy crossing. Thousands and thousands of people cross here regularly every day because they live in Myanmar and work here or vice versa. And it's a very busy crossing. And they closed it to foreigners, but because there was so much cross-border traffic, they kept it open to locals. But then 2 or 3 days ago, it was shut down completely, and even the locals can't get across. So normally the scene around me would be quite busy, but now, today, there's really nothing going on. And yeah, very unusual situation, which is why I thought I'd break out the GoPro and show you a little bit of what's going on here. So I've never been to this immigration office before, but I think it's just ahead of me on the left there. And this, right in front of me, is the border crossing. And as you can see, it is completely closed. They have like a fence across there, and nobody's going through at the moment. Mae Sot boundary post. And just down here, I think, is the immigration office. And just ahead on the right, you can see the Friendship Bridge. So when you go through this border post, you actually walk across this bridge, goes across a river, and then you arrive in Myanmar. And it's usually a very busy bridge, lots of people going back and forth. And as you can see, there's nobody there at all. One thing I learned while doing all this research into my options of what I can do is that there are 2 Friendship Bridges here. I didn't realize that. This is Friendship Bridge number 1 in Mae Sot, and there is a new one, Friendship Bridge number 2, just a few kilometers up the river from here. And I think this one is more common with pedestrians, people who walk back and forth, and the other one is more of a streamlined highway crossing, caters more to, you know, traffic, cars, trucks, and buses, and that sort of thing. So I've got my fingers crossed here because I don't really know what's going to happen. I haven't extended a visa in Thailand for many, many years. I don't remember the process at all. And the situation now, with so many things going on, I really don't know what they're going to ask of me. All the news that I've seen is about people flying into new countries. So Thailand just put in new rules yesterday, I believe, that if you want to fly into Thailand, you have to present a health certificate saying you do not have the coronavirus, and you have to present an insurance policy that has $100,000 of coverage for COVID-19 treatment. And that, to be honest, is effectively a ban on almost everyone because you really can't get tested for the virus. So how can you present a health certificate saying you do not have it? You know, even if you're flying out of a nearby country, they don't have tests available for everyone. You can't just walk into any, you know, hospital, get tested, get a certificate, and then head to the airport. It's just not really feasible right now. So asking for this certificate kind of means very few people, if any, can actually fly into the country. But I'm in a different situation because I'm already here and I have a valid visa, and I'm hoping to get an extension on that visa. And I'm not quite sure what they're going to ask of me, you know, to do that. So I don't think I'll be able to take the GoPro inside the office and film the process. I won't try to do that. I'll check back in later when I come out, and I'll tell you what happens. And here it is, by the way, Tak Immigration. Tak actually refers to the nearby large city, which gets a little bit confusing because even though it's Tak Immigration, it's actually located here in Mae Sot. And there is the immigration building up there. It opens at 8:30 and it's about 10 after 8 right now. I can't help myself. I always show up everywhere early. And normally when you get a visa extension or something like that at one of these offices, it's always a good idea to arrive really early. I think before the coronavirus situation, you could have shown up here at 7:30 in the morning, like an hour before it opened, and you'd find a big lineup of people waiting. But not a whole lot going on right now. I don't see, I see 2 or 3 people over there. I don't know if they're in line or not. But I have 20 minutes to wait until it opens. Fingers crossed. Like I said, I don't really know what they're going to do in terms of someone already in the country. I saw some news articles online from places like Phuket, very popular for foreign tourists, you know, a holiday resort island. And the Phuket Immigration said that they were making it more readily available for foreigners, you know, to get a visa extension because they know a lot of people are stranded in Thailand with no way to get out. So some people who wouldn't normally be eligible for an extension, they're actually making it eligible for them. But then in a weird twist, they said that in order to get this, you have to get a letter from your embassy stating that you need this extension because of the coronavirus situation. So a lot of people on Phuket, I guess, were still kind of stuck. You know, they wanted to go to the Phuket Immigration to get the extension to allow them, you know, not to travel and spread the virus and all that kind of thing. But then they have no way of getting this letter. You know, embassies are swamped right now. It's not like you can send them an email and get a letter from them. They're probably not even answering very many phone calls. You know, they've got a lot to do right now. So it was nice of them to offer this extension, but then they put rules in place that made it very difficult to actually get it. And I haven't heard anything about this immigration office, any requirements here, any new ones. So we'll find out what happens. Well, I was just inside immigration and left again. I was in there for about, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes. So far the news is not bad, but it's not good either. It's really confusing. I have this thing about forms, I have to admit, and that is the worst form I've ever seen. Like it's a simple visa extension form. I stared at that thing forever and I could not figure out how to fill it out. The way it's labeled in Thai and English underneath all the different lines makes no sense at all. I couldn't figure it out. Anyway, I did my best, went up to the counter, handed in all my documents, and I was all ready to, go to the next step. And they said that I needed a receipt from my hotel here in Mae Sot. And that's a bit of a problem because now I have to go all the way back into Mae Sot, go to my hotel, get a receipt, and this hotel doesn't issue receipts, so I've never gotten a receipt from this hotel. It's just a cash only thing, and you hand them in the money and then you stay and that's it. So I don't have any receipts. So now I've got to head into Mae Sot, back to my hotel, and convince them to write up some kind of a receipt for me. Weird thing about Thailand I find is that it's one of the most popular countries in Southeast Asia for tourism, right? Millions of people come here every year. And yet, I'm not complaining about this. I mean, it's their country. They can speak, their own language. That's fine. But it is interesting that I have far more trouble making myself understood in Thailand than anywhere else. So I go to wherever, Malaysia, Philippines, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and there's always enough people around who speak English, that you can sort of work things out. But in Thailand, I find no one ever really speaks English, even at immigration. I think they thought they were speaking English, but I couldn't make out a word that they were saying. So I was trying to find out what kind of a receipt I needed. Like, okay, I need a receipt from this hotel for how many nights? Like, do they want a receipt for the extent of my visa extension, what I've already paid for? Do I have to pay for more nights and get a receipt for like 2 nights, 5 nights, 1 night? But no matter how many ways I asked that question, I couldn't get an answer. So anyway, I'm heading back into town, going to try and get a receipt from my hotel and then come back here before they close. The other weird thing is that I pushed back a little bit. I told them in English, very politely, that I did a huge amount of research. I was all over the internet, and I was looking up all the information for every document I need for this visa extension. I went to the official government sites, I went to travel sites, I went to travel forums, read everything I could possibly find, brought everything that was listed and more. None of them mentioned a receipt from your hotel. And this doesn't appear to be a coronavirus, new thing. It's just a rule that they have, that you have to have a receipt from your hotel. But I challenge you to look on the internet for Thailand and find that requirement listed anywhere. And I guess it wouldn't normally be a big deal, but this immigration office is, 8 kilometers outside of town. So now I've got to go back in and then come back again. Anyway, let's see how that works out. I met another foreigner in there, and an older than me gentleman. And I didn't get his whole story, but it looks like his visa expires today. And he seems to be in a lot of trouble trying to get this extension. He says his story has gone viral on the internet because he's in such a bad situation. And he's been trying to figure something out, how he can stay in Thailand, because he can't go anywhere else, right? I mean, if they don't let him stay in Thailand, doesn't really help him much because he can't go anywhere else. He has no choice. But there didn't seem to be any atmosphere at the immigration office about the coronavirus, no special rules or systems. nothing at all, just normal visa extension. And you have to jump through the bureaucratic hoops. In this case, get a receipt from my hotel, and then once you fill out the form and give them all the papers they want, I guess you get the extension. Though the weird thing was, while I was pushing back a little bit and saying, I've never heard of this requirement for a hotel receipt before, and kind of hoping they would make an exception because of the coronavirus and all that kind of stuff. And so they got on the computer, and the woman looked at me and said, "You're not even supposed to be here. Aren't you in Bangkok?" I'm like, "No, never went to Bangkok, never got close to Bangkok. I've been here in Mae Sot this whole time." And she says, "No, you're not in Mae Sot, you're in Bangkok." I says, "Well, I'm standing in front of you. I'm in Mae Sot, What can I tell you? Not to Bangkok." So I was getting worried that they were going to tell me I had to go to Bangkok to get my visa extension, because as far as their computer is concerned, that's where I am. I have no idea why their computer would say that. Anyway, let's head back to my hotel and get this visa, get this receipt, and go from there. Well, I'll start with the happy news. I did get my visa extension, and it goes until April 25th. So I can stay in Thailand until then, and hopefully some borders will open up before that time. And before April 25th gets here, I'll be able to fly out of the country, fly somewhere anyway. Or maybe even the border into Myanmar will open back up again, and I can cross on that Friendship Bridge that you see behind me. Yeah, this is the kind of a no man's land here alongside the river. That's Myanmar behind me, just over there. And as I've been walking along this riverside, past a couple of soldiers with very large, dangerous looking guns, guarding the border right now. Maybe they're always there, I don't know. But yeah, I needed the receipt from my hotel, and went up to the counter at my hotel. It's kind of funny because it's not the kind of hotel that gives a receipt. At immigration, when they were telling me about this requirement, they showed me examples of what I needed to bring. And of course, they brought out these big, elaborate receipts from fancy hotels, with credit card numbers and all that kind of stuff on it. And I tried to explain to them that, yeah, the hotel I'm staying at, they don't give receipts. They may not even have receipts, but, I had to go check. So I went back to the counter at my hotel, and the usual young guy was sitting there. He's always got earbuds in, and he's playing video games or something on his phone while talking to other people on his phone. Like he multitasks that. And he never, ever does anything else. That's all he does is he sits there. And you can stand in front of him for 20 minutes, and he will not look up until you physically, get in his face and kind of like, "Hey, excuse me." So I did that. Asked him whether he could provide a receipt. He was very confused about that for a while. I got out Google Translate, typed out receipt, showed him in Thai, receipt. And he rummaged around in a drawer for a little while and came up with this scrap of paper that had First Hotel on it. Kind of tossed it my way and said, "There's your receipt." So I kind of handed it back to him and said, well, in English, I'm trying to communicate with him. It needs to be filled out, can you fill it out, And he just shook his head no and gave me a pen. So I had to fill out my own receipt. And of course, I'm reading the Thai, trying to figure out exactly how to fill it out. But I put in my name and phone number, and I didn't know what dates to put in because I just didn't know what immigration required. I didn't think it mattered that much. So I picked a couple of random dates previous to this and then a few days in the future as my, sign-in date and then my departure date. I figured any dates would be good enough. And then I got the clerk to sign his name down at the bottom. There's a little box for signature. I wasn't sure if that meant a signature for me or, hotel employee. But anyway, I got him to sign it. And yeah, then I had to go get a photocopy of that, of course. And once I got the photocopy, I took another taxi back to immigration. This is kind of an interesting area to walk around, actually. I hadn't been down here before. There's all kinds of stalls. They're A lot of them are empty, of course, because there's no cross-border traffic right now. But I'll show you what I'm looking at in front of me. There it is there. And all of these booths are selling, you know, black market whiskey and cigarettes mainly. That's what everybody's selling. And I passed by quite a few more soldiers walking along here. I don't know whether the soldiers are usually here. They could be here just for the coronavirus period while the border is closed. Or maybe they're always stationed here, I don't know. Anyway, once I got back to immigration, it still wasn't that busy, which was nice. I handed over all of my documents, and to my delight, they did not ask for anything else. When I was there earlier and they asked for the hotel receipt, I wanted the guy to, you know, go through my documents, like all of them, just to make sure that there's nothing else that I'm missing. Like I showed up with every document I could think of. And then he said, well, we also need the hotel receipt. So I wanted him to, you know, look through my whole package and make sure, you know, that I have everything that I need. But he either didn't understand that or was unwilling to do it. I wasn't sure. So I was just crossing my fingers that now that I had the hotel receipt, I'd be good to go. I was worried he'd come up with some other document that I needed, you know. Couldn't think of what, but things went really smoothly. I think he was a bit surprised by the receipt. He kept holding it up and saying, this is the receipt. This little scrap of paper, you know, like did you actually get this from the hotel or did you, like, dig it out of the garbage can? That kind of thing. And but once I got through him, he stapled everything together, passed it on to a woman, and to my surprise, they stamped it really fast, sat me in front of a computer to take my picture, and I was out of there with my extension in 5 minutes at the most. I think that's all it took from when I got in till when I was walking out the door with my extension stamped in my passport. So yeah, that was very, very cool. So now I can relax. This is quite an interesting area. As I said, I haven't been down here before. That's the river right over there, Myanmar on the other side of the river. And all these people living here, I have no idea whether they're Thai, Myanmar, maybe stateless people, you know, that don't really belong anywhere. I don't know. Kind of a squatter settlement, I guess. Wow, look at that, this hut here. A bunch of them have these, I guess they're leaves making kind of a waterproof roofing. Not quite sure what that is. Oh, yeah. But they've just been allowed to get very, very old and brown. But it's not the rainy season now, so they don't need much waterproofing. When I was doing all of my research about all the different countries that I can't go to and all the requirements for the different countries, I was reading up on Myanmar, and some of the language about the border closing, so border closures, was confusing. Because they would say that, you know, the Friendship Bridge was closed, this was closed. But they also wrote about these illegal border crossings also being closed. Like I've always been wondering about these informal border crossings. Like, do the police know about them? Of course they know about them. But I mean, are they official in any way? And a lot of these articles that I read kind of made it sound like these illegal border crossings are actually, you know, accepted by the officials, are actually a type of border crossing in their own right, because they were talking about they are also closed. So, you know, looking down here at the river, you can see the boats just up ahead of me there, and those boats would normally be ferrying people back and forth, even though that huge bridge over there is the official border crossing. But yeah, I don't see anybody taking boats across. But as you can see, that guy in the middle of the river, you know, he's just walking across. The river's so shallow that anybody could just walk from one country to the next. I didn't mention this, but the visa extension cost 1,900 baht. And I think that's the standard fee. It's not been raised or lowered for the coronavirus period. One funny thing is I was back at my hotel, the first hotel, and waiting for my taxi to come because I was going to take a taxi to come back to immigration. And another foreigner, a white guy, came walking up to the hotel. I smiled at him. We gave each other the foreigner nod. Turned out he was from the United States, and he was in a similar situation to me, probably much more complicated situation, it sounded like. He had a flight back to the United States coming up, but his visa was expiring, so he came here to the border thinking he could cross into Myanmar, turn around and come back into Thailand and get another 30 days that way. But of course he got here and found out that the border was closed, and he couldn't get across. Hello. So he was trying to figure out what to do. I think his visa had already expired. It was only he was 2 days beyond his visa date. But yeah, it was just interesting to contrast the two of us because I tend to be fairly organized, before I do something like go to immigration. I'll do days of research, make sure I know everything before I go there, plot everything out on Google Maps, make sure I have all the documents, photographs, the money, make sure I've got everything. But this guy, he walked up to the hotel. I told him, well, I'm heading to immigration right now. I'm just waiting for my taxi. And he says, oh, mind if I hop in with you? I was like, yeah, I don't mind, hop in. So the taxi came and the two of us went to the border together, to immigration together. But he didn't even know whether he had anything. Like he says, hey, do you think I need copies? And I'm like, well, yeah, you're going to need copies of everything, but maybe you can get copies there. And he's like, I don't have a photo either. He's like, he didn't have anything at all prepared in advance. And yet he was perfectly happy just hopping in the taxi and going to immigration. And he figured, he'll figure it out when he gets there. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not the way I would normally do things. Just interesting to get that contrast. If I were him, already having overstayed my visa by 2 or 3 days, he didn't even know how many days, without any of the right documents, without a photograph, without anything at all, I would have been freaking out. And he was just completely, he's like, yeah, it'll work out. And I'm sure it will. So I think he should be a little bit more like me, and I should be a little bit more like him, like a little bit more relaxed. Well, I made it as far along the river as I could go. I passed maybe 4 groups of soldiers, and when I got to my 5th group, my luck ran out. There were 3 regular soldiers there, with the big guns, kind of looking very grim. But the difference was that there was also 1 officer there. And the soldiers actually ran to the end of the sidewalk, the cement sidewalk that I'm walking on, and held their guns there. They didn't point them at me. They just sort of held them, displaying them, and said, the officer just kind of looked at me and grunted and went, away, you can't, go, 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 go. So I just turned around and came back this way, of course. I was actually surprised that they let me walk along here as far as I have. It's quite nice here. Nice little walkway beside the river. I did the same walk on the Myanmar side, when I was there last time. So I walked all along this area here as much as I could. It's not as open as on this side. But yeah, this was one of the informal border crossings there. It seems oddly developed for an informal site. As you can see the steps on the other side and all the boats down there to take people across. And then over here, there's also a set of steps on the Thai side. And these are the steps on the Thai side, heading down to the river, and then they cross and climb up on the other side. Looks like there's a... Hello, how are you? I just saw one man crossing over with a big backpack on his back and carrying a big box full of chickens, I think, from the sound of it. Surprised the soldiers, because the soldiers were standing right there. They let him go across. And that guy down there just crossed over from Myanmar over to Thailand. Full view of all the soldiers, but nobody stopped him. So I assume they know who these guys are and that sort of thing. And while I was doing all of my research into possibilities of, countries that are still open and things like that, I came across quite a few stories that were, man, they really made me think, I mean, I'm kind of stuck here in Thailand, stuck in Mae Sot in a way. I can't go into Myanmar, I can't go to Malaysia. I suppose I could try to go back to Canada, but I have no reason to do that, and I'm perfectly happy here. I have no reason to go anywhere at the moment, now that I have the visa extension. But I really think about the people that got stuck at airports, and I saw a lot of those stories online, so things could be a whole lot worse. There was that big story out of Malaysia of hundreds of students from India. They were studying in the Philippines, and then when there was word that India was going to be closing its border soon, they all decided to get home. So they all left the Philippines and were trying to get back home, back to India before the border closed, but they didn't make it, and India canceled all flights into the country, and they were stuck in transit. So they were stuck at the airport, international airport in Kuala Lumpur. They couldn't continue on to India, they couldn't go into Malaysia, and they ended up basically living in the airport. They had nowhere else they could go. But I guess with social media, they got on YouTube and Instagram, whatever. They started posting videos about their situation. That's how, I found out about them. And it turns out there were students from India trapped in airports all over Europe. They were trapped in the airport in Rome and other places. And man, that would be much worse than my situation here in Thailand. And eventually in Malaysia, they actually took all of those, there's like 250 students, I think, took them away from the airport, brought them into Kuala Lumpur or into the country, and put them up in hotels. They found places for them to stay. I assume they have to pay for it themselves, but it was really amazing that, the Malaysian authorities stepped up to help these people and found them places to stay. I don't think anything like that would happen here in Thailand, though, I'm not so sure about that. And while I was doing my research, I came across two really awful stories about Canadians who also got stuck here in Thailand. I think I have to change the battery on my GoPro. I'll tell those stories in a second. So one story that I saw online was about a young Canadian woman who was on holiday on the island of Koh Tao. It's a big, tourist backpacking island here in Thailand. And she rented a scooter with a friend of hers. They were driving along, and according to the story, the brakes didn't work. The brakes failed. They lost control of the scooter and crashed into a metal guardrail. And she was badly injured, broke her leg badly. They showed an x-ray in the story of her leg bones, completely shattered, and they were actually crisscrossing each other in an X shape. Her leg was that badly broken and twisted, and she broke bones in her face and other things. And there she was, in the middle of all this coronavirus pandemic, on the other side of the world from her home in Canada, a young woman, broken leg, broken face, and she ended up in, being carried by ambulance, ended up eventually ambulance and then a boat, and she got into a hospital in Koh Tao, in Koh Samui, a bigger island. And then, of course, she had to get surgery done on her leg. But for the other surgeries on her face and things like that, they wanted to get her back to Canada, but they had to go through insurance companies. And of course, with all the new restrictions because of the coronavirus, everything got complicated. And man, my heart went out to this poor girl. Couldn't imagine what that would be like. You know, all I had to do was come to immigration and fill out some forms, and that was stressful enough. Couldn't imagine being all by yourself in the hospital in Thailand. As she said in the article, like nobody could speak English. She couldn't really communicate with anyone. She was in this ambulance and they didn't like strap down her leg or anything. So as they're like racing along this road and bouncing up and down, she was watching as her leg was like flopping up and down and kind of moving around her body. Just sounded absolutely horrific. Last I heard, she's still in the hospital in Koh Samui, and they're trying to arrange a flight, you know, back to Canada so they could do surgery on her face. And I guess they need to do that within a certain number of days or the bones will start to set too early, and that can cause a problem for the surgery. Anyway, it was just a terrible, terrible situation. Hopefully she's doing better and things are working out for her. The other story was about a young Canadian man, and I think he was traveling with some people from France and maybe a guy from Germany. They were here in Thailand and they got on a flight to Sri Lanka. I think Thai Lion Air was the airline. And you know, they bought the tickets, went to the airport, got on the plane, no problem. But when they got to Sri Lanka, they wouldn't let them into the country, you know, coronavirus and all that. And they were barred from entry. And the local authorities in Sri Lanka argued that it wasn't their problem, you know. They said the airline should have prevented them from getting on the plane. So it was the airline's fault. So they basically sent these guys back to Thailand on Lion Air. And of course, when they arrived in Bangkok, they were not allowed into Thailand either. They couldn't get into Sri Lanka, couldn't get back into Thailand, and they were basically stuck in no man's land at the airport. Worse than that, they were kind of detained there. You know, they took their passports away and put them in a room. They had to sleep on the floor, and I think they've been there for 5 or 6 days or something like that. And they were even charging them $40 a night each to sleep in that room. And, you know, they were just trapped there. And last I heard, you know, they're still there. But, you know, the guy contacted his parents back home and phone calls were being made, emails were being sent, contacting the Canadian embassy and all that kind of stuff. And they're trying to figure out a way to get this guy out of the airport and get him on at least into Thailand, but failing that, you know, on a plane back to Canada. I think that's what will end up happening. But yeah, stories like that got me thinking about how, you know, lucky I am to have been here in Mae Sot when all that happened, and I'm able to get a visa extension. Couldn't imagine being in transit. You know, you're in some airport, and then all the borders close while you're at the airport. You can't go back into the country you just left, and, you know, you can't go into the country you're trying to get to, and you're stuck in the middle of nowhere. I was thinking about that with this Friendship Bridge. I'm back at the bridge now. There it is there. And when I was thinking about going into Myanmar, I hesitated for a little while because I was thinking that, you know, if I exit Thailand and walk across the bridge, try to get into Myanmar, and even if officially the border is open, they might say, no, it's closed, you know, who knows? They might not let me in. And then I'd be stuck on that bridge. You know, I wouldn't be able to go back into Thailand. I wouldn't be able to go into Myanmar. And I'd be out there in the middle of that bridge. So I'm much happier down here at the riverside than stuck up there on that bridge. Anyway, I think that's the end of this story. I'm still down at the immigration area. I'm going to head back into town now. And yeah, relax and enjoy having my visa extension. So I'm free to move around Thailand if I want to, but I'm not sure that I will. It's probably not a good idea to do that. The general mood right now is to stay put so that if you happen to be a carrier of the virus, I guess, you're not bringing it with you and spreading it around inside the country. So I think I'm going to hang out in here in Mae Sot for a little while longer and monitor the news, see if borders start opening up again once the virus gets under control. So that's the end of my story. Visa extension, 30-day visa extension, successful here in Thailand. So yeah, happy ending to that story. See you in the next video. I'm walking back into Mae Sot from the border where immigration is located. I just wanted to give maybe a short epilogue. I don't know how well I described the situation here. But to be honest, in Mae Sot, if I didn't have the internet, I would have no idea that the coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic is happening. I don't really see any effects of it here at all. Mae Sot has always struck me as kind of a quiet place. If you go walking past, the restaurants in town now, they're pretty much all empty, but they always seem empty to me. Whenever I walk past a restaurant, I look in and I never see anybody sitting at a table. And you do see people wearing face masks, but that's pretty common throughout Asia all times of the year. I used to live in Taiwan and South Korea, and you'd see people wearing face masks in the office pretty much every day and in the subway, everywhere basically. So the fact that I see a few people here wearing face masks doesn't seem any different than a normal period. And there aren't any, restrictions for movement, or nothing seems to be closed or shut down or anything like that. I've heard that it might be different in the big cities, in Bangkok, where there's more possibility of, people getting close to each other and transmitting the virus around. But out here, life seems to be going on pretty much as normal, other than the border being closed. That's the main impact on me. And in a way, that's a little bit of a downer for me, because I'd much rather be across the border in Myanmar. It's kind of funny, whenever I cross into Thailand here, it sort of feels to me a lot like Canada in a way. I mean, I'm crossing this wide road system here. Nothing but traffic. You don't really see any people. And that's kind of how Mae Sot feels to me. Feels a lot like Canada. Kind of wide open spaces and not many people. And you don't have nearly as much of the street life as you do in Myanmar. So this wouldn't be my first choice, as a place to hang out. But as I said, my earlier stories about all the poor people and the Canadians that I heard of who are caught in transit, trapped in airports. I mean, that is, or trapped in hospitals, with broken legs. And so compared to those poor people, things are, quite good for me, now that I have my extension. So that's it, an epilogue. I just wanted to sort of tell you what life was like here, and nothing much to say other than it feels largely life as normal, really. All right. Got a couple more kilometers to go to get back into Mae Sot. Like I said, kind of wide open streets here. I'll show you what it looks like here. Oh, there's the road ahead of me. As always, not very pedestrian friendly. You basically just walk along the side of the road. Try not to get hit by someone coming up behind you. And that's it. See you later.